Welcome to Redtastic. Story 1. I, 18 female, live with my parents, 40 male and 39 female, and brother 9 male. I am the first child and according to my parents, the surprise child. According to my mom, I was unplanned and was born when they were still struggling. Due to this, I was deprived of a lot of things growing up. I rarely got gifts and had really basic meals. I wore thrifts only and the few toys I had were worn-out toys or from my parents' friends. Luckily, my parents got everything figured out and both got good jobs when I was 10 years old. I was very happy because I knew we would no longer struggle for certain things. We even got our own house. My brother was born a year after we moved into our house and I was the happiest person when he was born. However, I noticed a few things as we grew older. My parents, who penny pinchers with me, would splurge on my younger brother in the blink of an eye. I still use an old bike I inherited from an elderly cousin because my parents swore they had no money to change it. But they bought a toy luxury car and a Lego set for my brother a few days afterwards. I still wear thrift clothes, but he doesn't. I've complained about the partial treatment, but I'm quickly shushed and reminded that my brother is just a baby and that he needs these things because he was diagnosed with ADHD. Also, my birthdays are rarely ever celebrated, but my brother's birthdays were a full-blown affair. My dad insists on celebrating him this way, always going overboard on his birthday because he's their only son. I feel left out most times because my brother enjoys the full attention of my parents and gets what he wants. But they barely remember me except for chores and family appearances. Also, I am my brother's full-time babysitter. 3 weeks before my 18th birthday, my dad had promised to get a car for me since I'd be going to college soon. I was very happy because it meant I could use the money I'd been saving for a car for something else. But on my birthday, my parents didn't even wish me a happy birthday. At first I thought they were planning a surprise, but it was almost evening, and their body language betrayed nothing. It was at dinner that it dawned on me that my parents had forgotten my birthday again. I brought it up at dinner because I was beyond heartbroken. My 18th birthday was a turning point in my life, and I've been talking about it all week long, but I didn't even get a birthday wish from my mom and dad. They both gave lame excuses about work, and when I cried and screamed at them to stop the excuses, my dad smugly reminded me that I'm legally an adult now and should be thinking of moving out instead of crying like a 5-year-old because I didn't get a cake. I asked him how he could forget my birthday when he had promised to get a car for me, but he shrugged it off and said he couldn't afford it because he had used up the money he set aside to take my brother to Disneyland after he recovered from a sickness bout. And they booked a hotel afterwards. Something snapped in me when he said that. My parents had again gone on a trip without me. I remember that day because I was told to take care of the house and I did. I didn't even know about the trip because no one ever mentioned it. I screamed at them for always doing this to me, for forgetting my birthday, forgetting promises, and putting my brother before me. I asked if they still resented my birth and if they even saw me as their child. My mom got upset over my questions, so they sent me to my room and even grounded me. So I ran away from my home to my uncle's place, and after telling him what happened, they agreed to accommodate me. My family is now calling me an a-hole for being jealous of my brother. They even told a few of my friends that I cried over his Disneyland trip and toys. Am I the a-hole here? Update. My parents came for me a few weeks after I left. They complained that they're finding it hard to get a babysitter for my brother and that the house is always in disarray due to my brother's behavior. I asked them if they came for me because they missed my services as a free nanny and maid and they could not defend themselves. My dad tried to force me to leave with them, but I reminded him that I'm an adult and I've started making plans for my living arrangements and it does not include their house. I miss my brother, but I think I'm better off being away from my parents and feeling like a stranger in their house. You're not the a-hole, OP. Your parents are a-holes and bad parents. They're obviously favoring your little brother over you and treating you like an afterthought. Not only will this traumatize you, but it will also show discord between your brother and you. You did the right thing by going to your uncle's house. I'm sorry your birthday turned out the way it did. Don't go back home until your parents realize their mistakes and apologize. Story 2. My son is 19. A few weeks ago he had some friends over, which is fine. I went to bed early, and when I went to bed, my son and his friends were in the basement. I came down the next morning and went to check my emails. My laptop was in the same place I left it last night, but the screen was cracked, and it looks like there was a drink spilled on it. When my son got up, I asked him if he knew who damaged my laptop. He said he didn't know, and they had been in the basement while I had left my laptop in the dining room. I told him there was no way the laptop broke its own screen and spilled a drink on itself. So if it wasn't him, then it was one of his friends. He swore up and down that no one had touched my laptop. I was like, okay, then no friends over until someone fesses up. I don't think he took me seriously because I came home from work a few days later and he had some of his friends over. I apologized to them but informed them no one had owned up to breaking my laptop, so I wasn't allowing company over in the meantime. My son is very upset, says I'm embarrassing him. I'm of the mind that I don't want people in my house who feel it's okay to break my things then hide it. I've made it clear I don't expect them to replace it. I just want someone to own up to it and apologize. My sister has told me the punishment is harsh, and she agrees I'm embarrassing my son. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole, OP. How is this a harsh punishment? So your son is embarrassed he will live. Someone broke it and they don't even have the guts to admit they messed up. You're not even asking for them to replace it, though they should at least give you the value of the laptop in terms of depreciation and what it was worth at the time of the breakage. I would go further though and tell him that since he or his friends cannot admit who broke it, then he will be working off the value of it at the time of breakage. He will probably pipe up then. Now for some comments. The son is also 19, an adult. I guess his friends are at the same age. They are old enough to know the consequences of their actions, to destroy stuff and then act like nothing happens. Do this with a stranger and they get sued. Sis seems to think he is still a toddler, but he's an adult and the punishment was actually really mild, not the a-hole. My parents would have given us the choice. Either the whole group pays for replacement or the person who broke it does. Amazing how fast the culprit is usually found when they all realize they can't avoid the consequences by playing dumb and pretending they had nothing to do with it. Especially when the innocent ones find themselves potentially punished for something someone else did, not the a-hole. I actually think you let him off easily considering in all likelihood he might be the culprit. Not the a-hole. Your son is an adult and I question how he knew where the laptop was if no one in fact broke it. I can understand being embarrassed if I was the culprit, but they should fess up. Even if they don't want to tell you, if it was his friend, the friend can tell him in private and ask that he apologize on their behalf and offer to pay you. Stand your ground. Having friends over while you live with your parents is a privilege, not a right. They can go hang out at someone else's house till they want to act like adults. Story 3. I, 34 female, lost my mother to colon cancer in March of last year. I haven't been the same since, and I'm still not over her death. It was very sudden. She had been diagnosed with stage 2 colon cancer in December 2018 and had been improving until 3 weeks before, where she rapidly got worse and passed away with numerous health issues. I was diagnosed with clinical depression and anxiety when I was 25, and this only made my mental health worse. But recently, I found myself talking about my mother a lot more, which is a slight improvement, as I used to try not to think about her at all. For one reason or another, this has been irritating my 11-year-old son. Lately, when I mention my mother around him, he just seems annoyed. A few days ago was a year since my mother passed. And that day I prepared a meal for my husband, son, and I that my mother used to make for me and my siblings for special occasions. I planned to spend that evening reminiscing and telling my son about my mother, since he only saw her a few times. I wanted to start remembering only the good memories because I feel mentally and physically tired from grieving. While we were eating, my son made a snobby comment about the meal, and I told him to be respectful because it was my mother's recipe and that we were remembering her. I will never forget what he said next. "Why does everything have to be about grandma? Why can't you get over it?" Then I snapped. I used to cuss a lot as a teenager, but I've gotten out of the habit because I don't want to accidentally say something at work. But the words just came out this time. I hit the table loudly and told my son to F off twice. I instantly apologized, but now he won't speak to me. My husband has been taking his side, and today he suggested that I go to my sister's house nearby for a few weeks until I cool down. I was at the point where I finally felt like I could get better, and now I'm lower than I've ever been before. I feel like an absolute a-hole, but I just couldn't help it. And my husband is making me feel like one too. Am I the a-hole? Edit. I know this sounds absurd, but when I say the words just came out, I mean it. I haven't used that word in years. And it was almost as if something possessed me for a moment and let out all my anger and negative emotions I've been bottling up. My son has picked up several swear words from school, including the F word. And I've caught him using it more than once, not towards people though. Since my son is growing up, my husband has been using these words more often as well, not usually around my son. And I guess that hearing them so often has just brought them back into my vocabulary. Edit 2. To everyone suggesting counseling and therapy, thank you. I started looking for a therapist a couple days ago, and I'm scheduled for bi-weekly, hour-long therapy sessions beginning next week. Now for some comments. You're the a-hole. I get you're grieving, but you cannot involve your son in this process. You are placing a lot of expectations on an 11-year-old. Like, you honestly thought an 11-year-old boy was going to sit around reminiscing about his dead grandmother he only met a couple of times? Come on, find yourself a grief counselor and leave him out of it. You're the a-hole. Telling your child to F off is crossing a line. Grief or not, you really should look into therapy to get yourself the help you need to process and heal in a healthier way. Your son just seems as though he wants his mom back, so to speak. He knows that his mom hasn't been herself, that he lost a family member, and that he just wants some normalcy again. Children often become frustrated and impatient when they cannot fully process what is going on and the reasons behind it, such as the extent of depression and grief. You're the a-hole if you find yourself in a position where you have to tell your young child to F off, then you are failing as a parent. If you knew that your son was sick of hearing about your mother, sounds like husband is too, but merely being polite, then what you were expecting exactly from your plan to have a night of stories about her. Your grief is affecting your home life. Maybe instead of expecting everyone to accommodate to you indefinitely, you might benefit from grief counseling. I understand completely what you mean by the words just came out. It was like your body went on autopilot and skipped your conscious reasoning while you watched yourself do it. This is something that can happen under very strong feelings of stress.